Hey everyone, welcome to the Glowtips channel. In today's video, we will be doing a step-by-step in-depth guide for beginners on how to safely remove their poly nail gel without damaging any of their natural nails. Today we'll be focusing on the soak-off method using foil and acetone. So let's just go through everything that we'll need in today's video. So the first thing we'll need is the Glowtips 180 to 100 grit hand file. We will also need the Glowtips 120 grit white buffer. You need 100% or 90% acetone, a couple of lint-free wipes, a good couple pieces of foil for each of your fingers, and lastly some cotton pads or some cotton balls. So the first step is to cut down the length of the nails. Today I have really short nails, however I'm still able to cut down as much as I can. If you have long nails, this will be easier as you'll be able to cut down more length. However, if you do have very short nails like me, still try and cut down as much as you can, as this is going to make the removal process much quicker and a lot easier. However, if you want to keep your nails this length, then you can always skip this step. Next, we're going to file down most of the product on the nails. This is one of the most important steps as this will ensure a good and easy removal. The best thing to do is grab your Glowtips 100 grit side of the file and file down as much of the product as you can. The goal is to remove as much product as you can whilst leaving a thin layer in order to remove it later on. Keep checking your nails in case you're filing too much product. Sometimes if you file too much without paying attention, you can accidentally file your nail bed, which is not good as this will make it very thin and very sensitive. So make sure that you keep checking and feeling that there is still a thin layer of product left on the nail. A tip would be to use the 100 side of the grit because this is much coarser than the 180 grit side. The 100 grit will help you to file down the gel much faster in order to move on to your next step. However, our poly nail gel Glowtips formula is very soft and easy to remove, so you could also use a 180 grit file. However, just know that this will take a little bit longer. Okay, so now that around 80% of the product has been removed, it's time to get a dust brush and just remove all of that excess dust off the nails. This step is really important as we don't want any of the dust to interfere with our soak-off process. Now I'm taking some cotton pads and cutting them into 4 equal pieces so that I can use each triangle piece for each finger. I'm also grabbing some foil which I've pre-cut into 5 pieces. Next, you want to take a little piece of your cotton pad and put it inside the foil. Next, get your acetone and soak the pad. Then place your nail onto the pad and wrap the foil tightly. I like to fold in the sides and then fold the excess down towards the finger. This is going to create a nice tight little wrap in order for the acetone to really start breaking down that gel. I'm repeating this to all the nails and letting this soak for about 5 to 10 minutes. You might need to soak longer depending on how much product is left on your nail, but based off how much I've filed off today, 5 to 10 minutes should be enough. So just repeat this for all the nails. Again, just soaking the pad with acetone, making sure I'm placing my nail on the pad, wrapping the sides and folding the top down. Now that the nails have soaked for 10 minutes, it's time to check on the nails. So I like to remove the thumb and try to scrape off as much as I can. If I can see that there is still a little bit of gel left, I will scrape off as much as I can first and then reapply the foil. Sometimes I like to apply a little bit more acetone inside the foil in order to get it to soak off a lot faster. Be gentle when doing this and use a downwards motion as you do not want to dig the cuticle pusher up into the cuticles by mistake. I'm just then taking my thumb and rubbing off any of that excess and then reapplying the foil. I'm going to repeat this to all the fingers. This finger soaked off very nicely. As you can see, the gel has completely removed and it was super satisfying to do. This is what your nail should look like after fully being soaked, and I like to also get the cuticle pusher and just kind of gently scrape up the nail plate just to ensure that any residue has been removed also. then repeating this to all the other fingers. As you can see, the gel removes really nicely with our poly nail gels, and just removing any of that excess if there is any. Alternatively, if you're more comfortable with the orange wood stick, you can also use this, as this is a lot more gentle on the nails. However, I find that a metal pusher helps to really scrape off the gel a little bit faster. Now after another 5 minutes, I'm checking on the thumb, and as you can see, our poly nail gel has lifted very nicely. I'm just gently going to take the pusher and just scrape off that excess. Next, we're going to be grabbing the Glowtips 120 grit buffer, and I'm just taking this to quickly go over the nails. This is going to remove any of that last bit of residue that's left, and also kind of create a nice smooth surface on the nail, ready for your next set. But be very gentle with this, as you do not want to overfile your nails. Then taking the 180 grit side of that same hand file, I'm going to use this to just shape up the nails and just smoothen out the free edge a little bit. If you have longer nails, take this time to shapen up your nails. We recommend not to use a grit lower than 180, as this can actually cause damage to your natural nails, such as making them super thin and super sensitive. So just bear that in mind when picking out your nail file to file your natural nails. Now we're going to do a final dust off and a final wipe down using some of that acetone on a lint-free wipe in order to prepare our nails for some nail prep. Next, I will be pushing back the cuticles using a metal cuticle pusher. This is optional depending on how much cuticles are growing. Cutting back the cuticles is also optional depending on how comfortable you feel. After the cuticles are nice and pushed back, I'm quickly grabbing a cuticle nipper and just removing any of that loose skin around the cuticle and around the nails. This step is important as I feel like it helps to give a neater look to the nails. However, if you are not comfortable doing this, then you can always skip this step. When cutting away the skin, you want to use a very light hand and be very gentle. Make sure that you do not overcut, otherwise this can lead to some bleeding. As you can see, I'm just barely cutting away any of the white areas which indicate dry skin. Once all the excess skin has been removed, I'm going in with some hand lotion and just moisturizing my hands very quickly. And then I'm also finishing off with some cuticle oil, which you want to rub in very well, as your skin has probably been dehydrated from all that acetone. So make sure that you apply a nice generous layer of cuticle oil and rub it in. And these are the finished nails. I hope you guys have found this video very helpful. Don't forget to check out all the products used on our Glowtips website. And thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe. And we will see you in our next video on how to infill poly nail gel nails.